what are the worries of the ADC? The party has officially come out to reject INEC timelines, basically based on some of these issues that has been raised. What is the position of the ADC?
I think the ADC's position would be the position of most Nigerians, essentially, because the political party does not exist outside society. Again, Prof is my good friend, very brilliant and nice gentleman. But I want to remind you that one of the so-called direct primaries of 2015 or 2019 actual election resulted in about 40 million votes for the primary for President Buhari, which was more than actual votes of members. So, I mean, so let's not romanticize direct primary. So you have a direct primary when the outcome of the primary itself, the votes is far more, not even the vote of the election is not up to 20% of the primary. So that tells you the quality of that direct primary. And look at the problem here. No doubt about it. You see, the theory around primaries is that you want members of the parties to express their will. Now, if you look at models across the world, delegate elections are not even indirect so-called delegates, are not themselves as we think about them. Because if you go to the US, many do caucus, many do primary, many do delegates. But the process is always clear. The rules are clear. So people know how do you emerge as a delegate. So I don't want us to put too much, beauty around direct. That's the first question. The second question is INEC. Again, I mean, and that ties back to the issue why people defected. Some people are in safe seats, what we call safe seats, where they are doing well as governors. They don't seem to have problems, but they defect because they have no confidence in the integrity of the election. I'm sorry to say, nothing the chairman of INEC said this evening inspires confidence in the integrity of the 2027 election. I mean, his understanding about what makes a good election are logistical. But if you look at, and by the way, if you look at an election dispute, 2023 election, the dispute was never around. Ballot box came by 5 p.m. It didn't come early. Every issue is around the integrity of that vote itself. And so I would want them to speak more around how do we ensure that when people vote, results and votes align, results declared and the result of votes align. He didn't say that. And that ties back to the crisis we have with INEC. Look, yes, it's good to talk about open primaries, direct primaries. But this is a party, you are giving them a period of time to organize, submit electronic register that is credible, again, conduct those indirect primaries for all political office elections across the country. So the point is this. APC and I was commending him as a former commissioner, maybe he has insider knowledge. APC is head start, okay? So now you're going to create a crisis for other parties. And that's fixed, going forward. In 2023 election, 22nd, INEC did a very terrible thing. I was a regulator for 5 years at this. INEC is first and primarily a regulator, not a transaction agency. You cannot, on the eve of primary, the parties came and said, INEC, extend the time for us. INEC said, no extension. PDP hurried and did a primary convention. On the eve of PDP's convention, INEC gave 1 week for APC to redesign. That is Regulation 101, fundamental flaw. You must keep very even balance for everybody. Again, you can't issue election timetable as a final product without giving the parties drafts and say, on record, give us articulation of how you see this proposed calendar. Because ultimately, it's for the benefit of the political. So they give you their input and say, Mr. Chairman, look at, you have a problem. I know, the law is this, that. Please, this time is too short. So you reason with them and provide reason. Now, this is not theoretical. Every work that you do, sir, has to proceed from what you call decision-making on record. 1, evidence-based, reason, and communicated to them and their feedback in writing. Why is it important? It allows for judicial review effectively. It allows for integrity of process. Again, that comes to the issue of technology. In the last FCC election, the allegation was that beavers are now in people's hands. We don't even know the integrity of the technology. So my question will be this. I say ADC or any other party or any Nigerian civil, you need to, we finished 2023 election with so much allegations, so much issues. National Assembly did not conduct one public hearing. Nobody was put on oath, neither Mahmoud nor all the officers, to tell us what happened. That is shambolic. There's nowhere in the world that what comes out of it is credible. So the minimum is two things to conclude. First, there should be a bipartisan audit commission of INEC's technology. Nobody should place confidence in INEC's deployment of technology. The minimum is professionally tested by sort of engineers, bipartisan, to say, tell us how you procure beavers, show us clearly the security, the guarantee that these beavers are not in people's hands. In fake election results were printed and used. INEC admitted them. So we can't be talking about elections. You see, the problem with Nigeria is that we have no rigor of administration, rigor of process. How, for example, does the chairman of AGC or Labour Party know anything about their guarantee of process? If you have guarantee, do they know? There should be a public certified procedure to say, even if you want to do the primary, look at the considerations of time gap, to fill in the membership card, to put logistics, to go across the country. And by the way, last point, if you look at the law says direct or consensus. The same law now says if political office holders want to be delegates, how do you become delegates in a direct primary? That means there was a lot of incoherence and lack of clarity about that law. It's about procedure. You see, we should understand that it's not about the outcome, 10 million, 5 million. My concern is that always about INEC, the regulator, that you have to make rules in a manner that gives everybody confidence. But the small parties you mentioned about, you need to factor what's their concern. I mean, at the end of the day, INEC has to decide. Again, just to make this quick point, people talk about this electronic transmission overhead. Another issue. Now, the only problem was that the same INEC was the one who went to court. To excuse their failure to transmit, INEC argued that their regulation was discretionary. And the court said yes, that's the first problem. Now, the court has made it mandatory on paper. But that proviso, Bowden said that the default mode will now be that you could have 30% or 20 non-transmission. And the chairman was right. Nothing about real time here. The question is that after you have finished the work, the paper, the sign, if you don't transmit to the IRF, clause 38 of INEC's regulation was very clear. You do 3 modes of transfers. You do 1 to the IRF, 2 to electronic collection system, 3 manually. So INEC always follow manual, but they look at the rider here. In clause 48, if how to collect, which supersedes, in section 94, so if there's neither electronic nor IRF, the rule says you have to now use collect from the police officers, DSS, and others. So 2022 was actually good enough law. What failed was that INEC could not explain why there was glitch in the presidency that was known in the legislative, which was an error that the nation should have said, explain to us, forget court, explain what happened. It wasn't a deliberate sabotage. That would have helped us. And that's what people said. That would go to court and say, oh, it's because there's guideline, it's discretionary. And the court, unwisely, said it's discretionary. How can you guarantee the in Nigeria? Well, you have to move, sir. You said you're going to move to 3 kilometers, 10 kilometers to collect. And along the road, there could be multiple alterations on the hard copy. That was why INEC was right to say, real-time IRF is there for verification. The electronic collection is there for storage in case and judicial evidence. So if we now make this electronic transmission optional, or in fact, by default, it's now optional. My question is that we can still amend this law. By the way, President Tinubu amended national anthem in 1 day. Let there be a consensus to amend this section and put back electronic, allow INEC to provide usually through their regulation. INEC captures the event of failure. Finally, communication is not just electronic. This is a bad law. It could go for anything, including phone communication from headquarters to the police officer. Even if you have internet, the police officer may refuse to transmit on the basis that there was no communication.
All right.
We should amend this law quickly. The result that you take by BVAS is actually original. He captures it and puts it there. By the way, God uses the same BVAS for accreditation and says any result that is more than the accredited number. It's the same BVAS that uploads the accreditation. So the question is not about which is primary or secondary. The question is asked them, what was the mischief that this thing wants to solve? The only mischief is that when we finish voting, somebody used gunshot, ordered return officers, INEC, a professor, to declare fake results. Is senatorial. The matter came to INEC officials, some of the departments say, well, the result has been concluded, has been declared. Some say no. That's why INEC started saying, we want to guarantee the validity of declared results. So what the IRF does for us, and this is very clear, so we don't mix it up. IRF is like, if I finish voting, you declare the result, and I go home, and I say party X has scored 40. And on reaching to the collection center, it's now 5. How do I know? There's something that was sent at the most opportune time after closure of polling that INEC has in the electronic collection and in the IRF that we can see.
All right.
So at the collection center, look at it, like he said, you look at it and say, this result I'm supposed to collect, like Senator said, it's not the result that's been uploaded when the pool finished and signed by all the Prof. What will we lose if there is a retrievable digital result that you,
yourself, needs to go. No,